Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode. Is it five? Episode 5
So
of the
five.
Everything Sales podcast. Today, joining me, Matt Firestone. We have Erin Kaplan. Yalit is not going to make it on this episode, but we will certainly see her in future episodes. Here we talk about everything sales, as the name suggests, how to help you be successful as an SDR, as an AE. And today we're going to be talking about prospecting 101, getting back to the basics, something that, especially if you've been an SDR for a long time or you're a new SDR, you might neglect, but it's something that always has to be reviewed and figure out what works best so that you know how to crush your quota every time. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Also want to do a quick shout out to Glide Growth for helping sponsor the podcast. If you're a founder-led sales team, if you're a small sales team and you're looking to grow your pipeline, figure out how to make a real outbound engine work for you, then these are the people that I personally trust with my business, and I highly suggest reaching out to them if you want to start crushing your own numbers as well and want a big fat pipeline. Erin, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Matt. It's always a pleasure. And prospecting is always necessary. Regardless if you're an experienced SDR, you're just getting started, if you're an AE or a founder just getting started, you need to find people to start filling up the pipeline. And you need to start reaching out to people to just start having conversations, even if they don't result in deals. So it really is the absolute basic and the foundation of any outbound movement.
On that note, Erin, let's define the terms. So, if I came up to you, what is prospecting in the simplest terms possible for someone who's never heard of the term, who's just looking into SDR work? Define what that is.
Finding people to talk to. That's
Okay,
the
there you
best
go.
way I can put it without throwing in lingo like leads or your IPP, ICP, which I'm sure we're going to delve into. But
hmm
it's just
hmm
simply finding people to talk to that could potentially be relevant for your product and for your business.
Yep, that's exact. Finding the relevant people. I think that's
Yeah.
100% right. And I agree with you that any successful SDR is prospecting every single day. I don't care if your schedule's full of meetings. I don't care if you're busy with filling up your Salesforce or any other internal work you got to do. Prospecting is the basis of everything. And if you're not doing it consistently every single day, you're going to feel the negative effects of that very quickly. So we're prospecting every day. We're looking for the right people to speak to. Um, there's a big argument whether it's an art or a science. We'll talk a little bit about both. But let's start with the basics. What tools are you using in your prospecting?
I think, Matt, that going into tools, that's where we're a little advanced. I would start with saying, who are you looking for?
Sure.
Now, I divide that up into two categories. There is the ICP, which is your ideal customer profile, and there's your IPP, your ideal persona profile. So, your ideal customer profile is the companies that you are looking at. So, in my case, the company I work at, One Beat, we are looking for companies that are retail brands mostly, also looking into other trajectories, but our ideal company persona, they have storefronts, they have stores, they have physical inventory, and they have enough inventory, enough stores for us to really show value. So I know, okay, these are the companies that I need to be looking for. Then I need to say, okay, which people at these companies are the most relevant people for me to speak to. At my previous company, Incredibuild, those were developers. Those were people who were working in DevOps. Those were people who were working in the coding language which we supported, which was C++.
hmm
So I said, okay, I know the company I'm looking at for. I know the kind of people. So now I'm going to use tools to identify those people. I personally think that the absolute must, and I think that pretty much any self-respecting SDR organization and any self-respecting sales organization, your reps need to have LinkedIn Sales Navigator. It's the absolute basic. Essentially, what you can do with Sales Navigator is you can filter. And filter is just a way for you to get rid of all the noise and essentially use a sniper rifle and a scope to really zone in on the companies that are relevant and the personas that are relevant at those companies. And what you would do is it's hard to say, okay, I press 5 buttons and then I'm going to find all the people. We have to go a step deeper and start using keywords to say, okay, I know that I'm looking for companies that have a lot of software development. I need to speak with people who are working in these departments and are developing in this language. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the company. I'm going to kind of use my keywords, use my filters to zone in on the departments that I'm looking for. So I'll select a company, I'll select the department, whether it's engineering, whether it's R&D, and then I'm going to start running through keywords that I have found to be useful. So if I know that developer operations, DevOps is useful, I'm going to throw DevOps into my keywords and then look through those people. So essentially what I'm doing is every single step I take, I am zoning in and I am essentially filtering out all the noise until I have a concise group of people which are the most relevant for my message. And then once I have them, I would then put them into the tool which I use to reach out to people, into our CRM, put them into Outreach SalesLoft, and then get going. But that's the absolute basic of prospecting from my point of view. So, man, I got to ask you, do you do anything a little different? Where do you add your little spice on top? Because everyone does it as well as I do.
That's a great question, and I appreciate your breakdown there. So to go back to so let's go back to the, like you said, the basics of what you're using to build that list, and I'll get into some differences or some nuances that I do in my own process. So the best way, I think, as you sort of talked about zoning in and figuring out who that ideal person is you want to sell to, the best way to figure that out in my experience is to look at the people who were your first customers, speak to people in product, speak to other people in your company, get feedback from people who've spoken or have built out those first couple customers, and figure out what's the pattern amongst those people. If you're in a small startup like myself, that might not be a big list when you start doing it, but you do start to see, even if it's just 2, 3, 4, you'll start to see some things that are similar across a bunch of the people you're selling to, or at least people that you've spoken to that have had interest in what you sell. So you're looking for those patterns, and you're trying to play that balance between quality and quantity, because the more narrowed in you are and the more specific you are about your filters and who you're looking for, the smaller that list is going to be. So you don't want to be overly specific to the point where you have 1,000 filters and great, you have a list of 10 people, but you're not going to have much to do with that. On the other hand, you don't want to just put in, people that work in IT and get a list of 100,000 people. So it's
Unless
sort of,
that's your persona.
unless it happens to be your persona,
Yeah.
it could be you sell to 100,000 people, in which case I would definitely suggest using like some, I don't know, tools to help you do like mass AI outreach
Yeah.
or something. It's not the world I personally live in, but you want to find that space where you give yourself the highest likelihood that it's relevant to the person, but also have enough people to speak to. There's always that balance, and we could talk about this, in another time, but that balance between quality and quantity is something that every SDR faces pretty much with like every decision that you make in your outreach. And you have to decide how much time you want to invest in any given opportunity, and how much and when is it more valuable to give it up and move forward. So
Yeah.
you're looking for patterns. You're building that ideal persona, customer profile persona that you want to reach out to, and you're using that profile that you built of who's most likely to be interested in a conversation. And like you said, you're using that to guide what filters you're going to build out on Sales Navigator. I agree with you. I think when it comes to prospecting, Sales Navigator is an absolute must. I want to thank LinkedIn for sponsoring. I'm kidding, they're not sponsoring this.
We
That would be
wish.
pretty cool. Yeah, Glide Growth and LinkedIn would be a pretty cool partnership.
One day.
LinkedIn would be
One
LinkedIn
day.
would be very lucky to get a partnership with Glide Growth. It's very exclusive. LinkedIn
Oh
would be
yeah.
very lucky. Okay, so you're building out the filters on LinkedIn Sales Nav are excellent. If you're only using regular LinkedIn, speak to your SDR manager or your founder. SalesNav is the way to go because it gives you so many more options, and it's totally worth the money. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to do my job, and I don't think any SDR would be able to do it.
And that's
So
why it's industry standard. Everyone needs to
yep,
have it. Yeah. That
everyone
and the
needs to have it,
little that and the little premium tag on LinkedIn. I kind
and the
of feel
premium
that.
tag. So you asked about sort of differentiators between what you mentioned. I don't know if this is different, but I'll just sort of clarify some things that I do, and this is maybe similar to what you do. So on SalesNav, for whoever's familiar with it, you could search per person, like specific people, or you could search uh, per specific companies. So they're attributes that are relevant to a company, like what's their revenue, and then there's attributes that are specific to a person, like what's their role. So what I tend to do is I first like to build a list of the companies that I'd like to sell to. And you correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe this is similar to what you described. I'll narrow down my list of, let's say, 100 companies I'd like to sell to, and then on SalesNav you could then save that list of 100 companies. I upload that into where I do the search for people, and now I'm searching for people just within those 100 companies that I already know are the companies that are most likely to work with us. And now I can hone in on my profile for the person, and then I'm pulling people out of that list of 100. And that way, every time a company comes up, I have a higher chance of not missing anybody. If I'm just going to make a list of 10,000 people, I probably missed some people. I want to have my eyes on every company and do my filters and make sure that at any given company there could be two, three, four, five people that are relevant. So I do the company search. I take that list of companies, and then I do the people search just within that list of companies. So I don't know if that resonates with your process. I know some people will go straight to people and just make a people list. It's not how I operate, just because I feel like you end up leaving a lot of relevant people on the table. But
Yeah.
as I went back to, you have the quality versus quantity aspect, and it's going to take you a lot more time to do this. You're not going to be able to build a list right away with tons of people, so it's more arduous. But I do find quality wise, it is worth it's worth that extra couple minutes.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll say that's very similar to what I do. I'm not just looking for the persona across all of North America. I'm, deciding which the companies that I want to go after and pacing myself so that I do have the time and I do have the ability to really look into my prospects. Now, of course, you have to get the quantity up in addition to the quality. And finding the balance between the two, if you're just starting off as an SDR, it's a learning process. It's a learning curve, especially if you are the first hire in an organization where you don't really know yet. You're the person that's there to get things up and running. So if that's the case, you know, I do think there is more space to cast a much wider net, you know. And at the end of the day, the prospects you put into sequence, those are the people from which your clients will come. So if you're just starting to get the ball moving and you're starting to get momentum, yeah, cast a wider net, find those people. And I will say that sometimes, with Sales Navigator, uh, it's fantastic and everything, but one of the biggest limitations of it, and it's just the way it is that you're limited to people on LinkedIn. You're limited to companies which have a presence on LinkedIn. And a lot of people, they're selling to companies that are a little untraditional. They're not necessarily on LinkedIn. They don't necessarily have a big social presence. And if your personas, are not on LinkedIn, it could be a little more challenging. What I have found is that the best way to go after companies that aren't LinkedIn, don't have a big social presence, um, is the news. Is the news. In the end of the day, people and almost all companies do have some kind of public relations uh, uh, situation. And local news, especially in North America, is a huge source of for you to find companies and companies that have posted uh, recently. So here's just an example that someone could use. Let's say you say, okay, I see that a lot of our current clients are based out of the southeast of the United States. All right. And I know that, these are the personas that I'm looking for. Find out if there are any, groups, if there are any unions, journals that cater to that specific persona, try to find the key publications and, just comb through them, find the names. It's a much more arduous, but their public relations is big for almost all brands, even if they're small, okay, and even if they're not really not technological driven and on LinkedIn. It takes more digging, but part of being an SDR is also being a bit of a detective. You have to be able to look for the breadcrumbs, comb through things, and find the prospects. Because, like I said, your prospects, whoever you put into sequence, that's going to be one of your clients one day. So you have to comb through them. You have to do some legwork. LinkedIn Sales Navigator makes it very easy, but if that's not an option, you know, still have to make it happen.
Interesting. Doesn't the D in SDR stand for detective?
Sales detective representative?
Is that not it? Or maybe the S stands for sleuth. Think about that.
Could
Actually,
be,
don't think about
could
it.
be.
It's nonsense. Don't think about it. So, okay. So, Aaron, that makes a lot of sense. If you're selling to people that are outside of LinkedIn, I totally agree. You got to live where your prospects live. That's always been the case. And if they live on LinkedIn, that's great. And people on LinkedIn, all these sales gurus that are selling to other salespeople, they live on LinkedIn. And a lot of
Yeah.
their advice is catered around people that are living on LinkedIn. Most people are selling to types of people that aren't on LinkedIn all the time. So if you're selling to IT folk, or in my case, I'm selling to technical support managers, which are on LinkedIn but not in the same way that a salesperson is, then you got to cater your prospecting to it. So if I tell you that, what's working really well for me is I'm doing posts about X, Y, and Z, and then I'm prospecting into the people that interact with me. That's probably not going to work well for most people, unless you're like that's an industry leader, which I don't think. We could talk about that another time. I don't think every SDR should try to strive to be a voice in their space, because I don't think that it's a technique that works really well, and I don't think it's as authentic. Which is why
Yeah.
on LinkedIn I post about sales and not about my ICP, but that's a separate.
Yeah. We
That's a
had a whole
separate.
episode about it,
We had a
Matt.
whole episode. I'm not going to dive into that. Let's go back into Sales Nav. I have a couple questions outside of Sales Nav, but maybe we'll wrap up just the Sales Navigator piece. We're giving them enough marketing, anyways. What are I'll start with a couple just to give you some time to think about it. But what are some filters? Maybe I don't know if I would say unconventional, but some filters that aren't your basic, size of organization, location. Um, what are some of the more out of the box filters that you use? And I'll just start with a couple that I really like. Um, that give me a lot of good information to, like I said, every filter, the idea is that you want it to help guide you to the people that have the highest probability that they're going to do business with you. So I want to talk about just two, and you can tell me if you use these or if you have some others. Posted recently on LinkedIn, and I love it for two reasons. So what it does is it's gonna give you leads that have posted, I think in the past 30 days, if I don't have it in front of me, that have posted in the past 30 days on LinkedIn. So you could build a nice big list and then filter it by just people that are active on LinkedIn. And I think it's great for two reasons. One is there's a good chance that they're posting about something relevant to what you sell, or at least the industry, and you could sort of wiggle your way in through private message using that, and it's a great personalization piece. You can comment on the actual post, and once again, if you have an angle that helps you open up a conversation, that's number one. Number two, if they're active on LinkedIn, then there's a higher likelihood that they're going to be responsive to you, at least on LinkedIn. I do find that
Yeah.
it stretches across other channels. Like my lists of people that are active on LinkedIn also happen to be more receptive to phone and email. These are people that are sort of more out there. They're more
Extroverts. They're
engaged
more
with.
extroverted. Yeah.
They're more extroverted. They're more engaged with other people. At least like in their online presence. So finding the people that are posting on LinkedIn and using that as a filter is super helpful. And the last one I'll mention um, is growth. And on what's really cool on LinkedIn is you could filter by either company growth or department growth. So if you're selling to IT and you see that a certain company is, and people that are hiring in the same light, if you see that there's an IT team that's either in hiring mode or they recently grew by X%, and both of these are filters you can search, I think that can be a good measure as to a need they might have for your solution, depending on what it is. Do you agree with those? Have you used those? Do you have any other filters that you want to give a shout out to before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, definitely. I've done like a lot of those. I should try the HR growth one. Uh,
Hmm.
that sounds like a great idea, especially if your product is something that is tied to growth. So, for example, when companies are growing,
Yep.
that's great. It's a signal of health and that the company has funds and is starting to invest at least in people, and usually that aligns with technology. But as companies grow, they need more technology to make things more efficient because what worked for them as a pre-seed or a seed won't necessarily work for them as they raise A and B rounds. So that's definitely true, and I think that's great. I'm very big into the keywords, and in the keywords bar, there is this. I didn't know about it up until 2 years ago, but the ability to use and or is huge. So how would I go about that? Is that let's say I am looking for people that develop in a specific coding language, and and at Incredibuild we had a very specific uh, ICP and IPP and very rigorous qualification criteria. So we could only sell to people and only really help people that fit a very specific uh, need, and we're using very specific technology. So by me being able to write both the title, the area where they were working, and C++ and build and cloud. What this was able to do was to really zone me in even more. And be keywords, they're not just tracking the person's title, they're looking into their profile. So even if the only place on that person's profile it says C++ or it says DevOps or it says the keyword that you're looking for is in their skills or even in their description of their role, Sales Navigator will find it. And this could be someone who has a title you've never sold to, right? It could be a title that no one in your company has ever interacted with because it's a title that only exists in this organization, right? There's been a growth of people whose title is evangelical, or you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Evangelist. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a very specific thing.
Or
So
ninja. Maybe it's like a IT ninja or
exactly.
something.
Exactly. That's not necessarily the title you're looking for. Ninja Samurai. Like you're not looking for those titles, but the keywords are in their profile. And if you know how to leverage keywords, it can really open up a lot of doors for you. And I think that the filter that I use a lot is the seniority. So let's say you're prospecting a huge company, and there's a lot of people that are managers, a lot of people who are senior. Um, you say, well, I can't, import 100 people today. I mean, maybe you can, but if you're trying to be more focused, that can be kind of confusing. So what you can do is you can use the seniority filters to really find the decision makers, whether they are from the CXO level, VP, director, just simply with a click of a button, it'll filter it out for you and do a lot of the legwork.
That's actually great. The filters for keywords is great. You talked about the and or function. I think
Yeah.
you're awesome and amazing, Aaron. What do you think about that? I would use and, not
Or,
or.
or,
Nope, I would use and. You are both. You are both awesome and amazing. So, last piece I'll drop on just to pull it full circle is when I do that and I build those filters. You brought up, HR team grew X%. I'll actually use that in my call, and I'll say, hey, the reason I'm reaching out is I actually pulled a list of people whose HR teams grew, and it's on LinkedIn. I know that it might be inaccurate, and maybe you'll tell me this is totally off. But it shows you guys grew like a ton in the past couple months. Is that correct? And I'll call out that it could be incorrect. And just to sort of make like a light, funny tone, and so they understand that it's relevant. Like I'm reaching out to you because I saw this specific thing, and there's relevance to why I'm reaching out. So we talked a lot about sales now. We talked about filters. We talked about why it's a great tool. There's so much noise in the AI and sales enablement and sales engagement space.
so
Um,
much.
there's literally thousands that have popped up in the past couple months, probably since ChatGPT was released. So in less than a year, literally thousands. That's not an
Yeah.
exaggeration. Specifically with prospecting, the promise of automated prospecting. I saw one yesterday. It will prospect for you while you sleep. You wake up to 1,000 leads. Most of it, I think, is nonsense. A lot of these will work really well in the beginning, and then it sort of like
Stagnates.
tape. Yeah, because it's pulling. It'll pull you like the best leads for you right up front, and then either way, I don't think that a lot of these tools are great. Some of them are, and I work with some of them. So my question to you is, outside of Sales Navigator, the answer could be nothing. And I know people that are just Sales Nav people, and that works totally fine. But are you using any other tools for the purposes of prospecting?
All right. So I'm going to go back to stuff that I did at Incredibuild, and I use ChatGPT quite a bit. Now, I use ChatGPT to really dig into companies and to understand exactly where I should prospect. So I was doing most of my outbounding to strategic accounts, huge companies, the Intels, AMDs, NVIDIAs, just to name the chip ones. Um, and these are humongous companies with a lot of people that could be potentially relevant. But what I wanted to do was to understand where in the companies, which departments, or which products would be most relevant. Now, obviously, we know ChatGPT is not the most honest. Uh, it's not that it's honest. It doesn't know everything, and it doesn't know everything for sure, even though it presents it as it does. So you do need to do some digging, but it's very good at providing you with an overall direction and some insights that you wouldn't necessarily think about had you not asked. So I would ask ChatGPT uh, which products in Intel are developed most heavily with C and C++. And it would provide me with a list. I would then ask, okay, which of these products are located, have teams, where are the teams for each of these products? And then it would provide me even more insight. And then I would take those insights and say, okay, I'm planning myself out. I know that I have 5 departments at Intel that are based in EMEA that are heavy C++, that I can prospect. So then I would take that information, go into Sales Navigator, okay, use the geography filter, uh,
That's important.
use the keywords to find that specific department, and then it would open up a whole nother door. And I could make the messaging even sharper by saying that it's not just about the technology you use, it's about your product. And when you talk to someone, especially a developer, about their project specifically, one, it has more of an internal camouflage. It makes more sense to them. And it makes for a much more mature, much more in-depth conversation. And I personally think that with a lot of these AI tools, people are going about them wrong. If you're looking at an AI tool or any tool that automates something as a replacement to hard work and as a replacement to diligence in your own process, that's not the way to look at it.
Oh
You should look
man.
at them as a tool. You should look at them. I took the words right out of your mouth, didn't I? You should
No, I
look
was
at
going to say I was
them.
hoping that it could be used for those. I'm
Oh,
bummed out.
well. Well, it can. You should look at them as a tool to enable what you're doing. And I think we touched on this when we did the episode on the pitches about
Yeah.
what's the difference between a ChatGPT pitch and a Matt Firestone pitch. Is that a good SDRs and good salespeople use AI to enhance what they're doing to enable themselves, and subpar salespeople will eventually can be essentially can be replaced by AI because they're relying on it and they're letting it replace what they do. AI is fantastic. AI is your friend. Don't let it replace you, and especially not with your prospecting.
I love it. I totally agree. I totally agree. I think the promise of AI and not having to work as hard, it could definitely make you more efficient. But it. I think if you're using AI, you should still work as hard. Just put your energies into other places. So all that time I'd be spending doing X, Y, and Z, I can now spend somewhere else. I don't think we're in most cases you're not necessarily just sitting on a beach and having everything done for you. Maybe
Work
in a couple of
smarter,
years.
not harder.
Work smarter, not harder.
There you go.
Um, so I'll just add one, and then I want to go into a quick game as we finish off. I think we're at the half an hour mark here. I use Apollo along with SalesNav, and I use it. I do make a list on Apollo. I do think that SalesNav is going to be the best for making lists because I think people will be left on the table with other list building platforms. But I do use Apollo if I need like a bulk list just to get going on like a new campaign. And I also use Apollo because I could now pull people directly from SalesNav into my Cadence, which is super helpful. I could just literally like import like a whole ton at a time, so it helps
Yeah,
there.
it's amazing.
Okay, so quick game to finish off. I'm gonna pull up. Maybe we'll see how it goes. If it doesn't go well, then we won't continue. But I'm gonna pull up three different companies on SalesNav. I'm gonna describe them to you and see if you can tell me who they are.
Ooh,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. So this company is based out of California, Mountain View, California. It says they have
Okay.
170,000 plus employees on LinkedIn. These are companies you'll know. 1 billion plus in revenue. It's probably the highest like limit that they put. It's software development company. Um, if and I could give you the overview if you want some more. I'll tell you their specialties. And I'm pulling all this from SalesNav. Search, ads, mobile,
Oh,
Android,
it's Google.
online. Boom. Okay. Let's do
I
two
was
more.
I was gonna guess Google either way, uh, simply because of Mountain View. So like all like these big companies, they usually just like take over like a city essentially.
That's funny. I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, like
Okay,
Microsoft
here.
took over Seattle.
Okay, this one is 135 employees. According to sales and ad, 10 to 20 million in revenue. And I'll give you the description. Blank created an AI-driven retail technology that uses short-term predictions to translate customer
One beat.
behavior. Excellent. Wow. Good for you. Good for
I had a
you. One
feeling.
B.
I had a feeling you're gonna do that.
Let's do one more. Let's do one more. Um, okay, 27,000 plus employees on LinkedIn, 1 billion plus in revenue. X builds technologies that help people connect, find communities, and grow businesses.
LinkedIn.
No, let me give you another hint. When X launched in 2004, it changed the way people
Oh,
connect.
Facebook. Facebook
Boom.
Meta.
Dude, three for three.
Oh, come on.
Wow.
You didn't make it that hard on me.
Uh, so I think that wraps it up. We're at, we're already past the half an hour mark. So it was great talking about prospecting. I think this also gave me some ideas, and I'm sure it gave you some ideas for future episodes. I
Definitely.
think an episode dedicated to AI and sales would be really cool. That's sort of
Oh
what's
yeah.
going on in my mind. So, thank you, Moret, who's in the background here, our producer. Thank you, Aaron, as well for the conversation as always. And like I said, and like we both said, prospecting every single day. I don't care, as long as if you're sick, don't prospect. But as long as you're able to work, that's a must. Every
Prospect through the
single day,
pain.
always be prospect through the pain. Okay, yeah,
Prospect
go
through the
go.
pain. Let's go.
Always be prospecting, whether it's a good day, whether it's a bad day. Always be prospecting. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye bye, everybody.